Well, the first and loudest parliamentary critic of this move was Conservative leader Andrew Scheer. The official opposition has been pounding on this all this week. The official opposition leader joins me in the studio. Welcome to have you, Mr. Scheer. Nice to be here.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, StatCan's says nothing nefarious here. They've asked the Privacy Commissioner to have a closer look. The Privacy Commissioner said, yep, I'm going to have a closer look. The Prime Minister says you're being paranoid. What are your concerns?
Well, our concerns is that this is a massive overreach from the government's power to peer into our personal information. This is only coming to light not because the government took action, not because Stats Canada took action, but because the banks themselves were raising these complaints on behalf of their customers. And I would put it to you that most Canadians were completely unaware of what's been going on for some time now. We're talking about detailed information, not just kind of a general snapshot about the health of individuals' financial situation. We're talking about line-by-line transactions associated with social insurance number. So we believe it doesn't matter what StatCan's says, it doesn't matter what the government says about procedures, it's about the fundamental principle. We don't believe the government should have the right to take this kind of information without your consent.
I'm curious if the Privacy Commissioner, who's no slouch in this, he's pretty aggressive in defending privacy issues. If he says, look, this is legal, it's within the law, do you down tools in opposing this, or do you still think there's an issue there?
You know, regardless of what comes out of this, obviously the Privacy Commissioner will look at this in the context of what he believes the law allows, or whether or not proper procedures are in place. But we have a fundamental problem with this, and if this is the interpretation, then we believe it's wrong. It's wrong that this practice is allowed to happen. Whether or not the law grants it or not is something that parliamentarians have to take responsibility for, and our position would certainly be that this practice needs to stop. I'm not comfortable with Big Brother having this kind of access to my data, knowing what goes on my credit card, or I'm not sure your viewers wouldn't feel great about the fact the government can just peer and see what you've been buying online, or what kind of credit card you have, what kind of transactions you're going through on that, when it's linked so closely to your personal information. And let's not forget that we've heard from this government before about proper procedures are in place. There have been thousands of data breaches. Just last year, the government had to settle $17.5 million in a lawsuit for a data breach relating to student loans. So this is not something that people have confidence in when the government has access to this level of data.
You think StatCan could be vulnerable to a cyber breach of some kind?
Well, look, if any other entity, if this was an individual or another company or a foreign government that did this, we would be calling this a hack. We would be calling this an outright violation. So again, it's a fundamental principle. The government doesn't have the business to be in your checkbook in this.
You're not just being paranoid, right?
Well,
Justin Trudeau says, hey, these are the guys that couldn't stomach a long-form census. They don't want data on anything.
Completely disagree with that interpretation. That's a huge logical leap. We're talking about your right to know what the government is accessing, your right to withhold consent if you don't believe that the government should have that level of detail. We're not talking about how far you drive to work or how many bedrooms you have in your house. We're talking about line-by-line financial transactions.
And that's what the role of StatCan is, you think? Just the demographic tracking and that sort of thing? They shouldn't be
overall general trends, the ability to inform policymakers about the direction that the economy is heading, or the strength of family finances. Fine, there's a legitimate role there to be played. But when we're talking about going in and taking snapshots of the last 6 months or a year of your credit card transactions, I don't think the government has that right.
Interesting. All right. I had a couple other quick topics I want to get to. I credit the National Post. They dug up the fact that the vice-regal office seems to include like $100,000 annual budget for office expenses, and Adrienne Clarkson, who left the GG job back in 2005, has been claiming it almost every year. She gets a pension for life. She got $3 million to start up a charitable organization. Justin Trudeau wants a closer look. Do you think it's warranted to have a closer look at the perks of a retired Governor General?
I think we'd absolutely have a closer look. I think there should be greater transparency, and I think we should actually revisit the entire policy of how long does the government, does the taxpayer have to foot the bill for people who have long since discharged their duties. I appreciate the fact that it's a very high-ranking role, and that we have to treat people who have held that position with respect and make sure that they have the abilities to carry on some of the work that they do. But to the point where every year in perpetuity for as long as they live, over $100,000 of expenses, I don't think that that's an appropriate expenditure to put on the back of taxpayers.
And they usually seem to land in other jobs right after. Like Michelle Jean was a Haitian envoy, then she was the Francophonie. So.
Right, and to that point, once they've gotten established in a not-for-profit or in another career, I think that's an appropriate time for the government Parliament to say, okay, well, maybe, thank you for your service. You're on your own now. You've got the pension, you've got the other packages. At the very least, we need greater transparency. I think we should have a conversation about how long that support is granted to former GGs.
I'm running out of time, but I know you're parliamentary, you used to be a speaker, so you probably understand this stuff more than I can figure out. I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but there was a NATO parliamentary committee last night, nonpartisan, and there was an ouster of a former Liberal MP turned Conservative MP, Leona Alislev. I'm curious, that sounds like it was chaos. It sounds like there was a real problem going on. What did you hear and see?
Well, you're absolutely right. These parliamentary associations are supposed to be nonpartisan. It's where individual MPs come together around common causes. We have groups to promote closer ties with China, with the UK, with NATO, with Parliamericas, and they're a forum to get out of the control of party whips and just allow individual MPs to interact with each other. After Leona Alislev crossed the floor to the Conservatives, she had been discharging her duties admirably, well respected by everyone she worked with. The Liberals convened a special meeting to try to dump her, just pure political revenge. What they tried to do wasn't in order. It was shown to be not appropriate, the way they were trying to do it, so the meeting was adjourned, and a Liberal MP came storming in and forced the clerks to reconvene just for the sole political purpose of getting rid of a member of Parliament who well-respected, highly well-respected former member of the Armed Services. The entire cabinet was there. Can you imagine the PMO keeping the entire cabinet there last night to exact political revenge on an MP?
Very quickly, there's observed bottles going around, or a bottle of vodka being passed around to your staffers there. Is that something that goes on all the time? This was a meeting behind closed doors.
Well, it was a late night event, later in the evening. As you know, there's lots of events.
Nothing good happens after 8 o'clock, I think I heard someone say.
Someone did say that at one point, yeah. No, there are events on Parliament Hill where MPs, sometimes staff, sometimes journalists, and sometimes government relations people come and interact. As long as the drinking is responsible, as long as the consumption is responsible and nobody's underage, I think that's something that's very important. I imagine everyone needed a stiff drink after they saw the undemocratic actions of a Liberal MP dumping a well-respected former armed services veteran.
Andrew Scheer, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.